be successful at any endeavor, one must understand the market, the competition you'll face, and how much work you'll need to generate to be profitable, and how you'll get that attention and recognition you'll need to be a long-standing business. To give you an idea of the size and scope of the photography market, New York City alone has over 4,000 photographers within a 22-mile radius. That's about 182 per square mile. That's competition. Of course, all major cities will boast similar numbers, so you'll have to stand out and do good work. Unfortunately, professional photography has a painful catch-22. You can't get hired without experience, and you can't get experience without being hired. In spite of this, many photographers do make it, and so can you. The key to your success will be understanding the different avenues you'll be able to take as a photographer, and the contacts you'll need to keep your foot in the door. First, the secondary advertising cities. What that means is any city outside of LA, Chicago, or New York. It's far easier to make the transition from amateur picture taker to professional photographer in the smaller metropolitan areas. There's typically fewer people in the same profession, so securing assignments should be easier. Also, the smaller market will allow you to work with many styles of glamour or boudoir image making. So as you grow, you'll be able to define the specific style that will become your specialty. Costs will also be much more reasonable in a smaller city for studio space, advertising of your services, and the general cost of overhead. The work of a professional involves much more than a simple photographer-client relationship. You must get acquainted to the advertising agencies, art directors, model agencies, models, and stylists. My suggestion would be for you to take your portfolio of photos around to these different businesses and tell them of your desire in the photographic field. In the smaller market, these contacts may turn out to be the resource of that one job that pulls you into the ranks of the professional. A few different ways to attract their business may be yellow page advertising, direct mail to prospective clients, and newspaper ads. The ads in the local newspaper are a must for the beginning boudoir photographer. After the initial advertising, word of mouth should help defray the cost, and you should be on your way. And finally, it's important for you to realize that there are many different subcategories within the glamour market. For example, fashion photography is most certainly glamour, as well as some types of portrait photography. Also, as part of glamour photography, there are divisions like calendar, advertising illustration, even lingerie and boudoir photography. What will set you apart from the rest of the photographers out there and guarantee your success will be the dedication to your craft. Remember that cream rises to the top, and if you put a lot of energy into your technique and applying what you've learned, you will be successful in the glamour arena. If your sole intention is to strike out on a career of glamour photography and specialize in calendar work or men's magazines or other traditional glamour type markets, you'll need to begin building a good, strong working relationship with both amateur and professional models. Having varied styles to your portfolio with many different and good models may be just what the art director you have an appointment with tomorrow has been looking for. So shoot, shoot, shoot. As with all professional businesses, there are a few considerations that deal with copyright, rights, and releases that I'd like to cover briefly before moving on. As a photographer, it's your responsibility to have your model sign a model release, even before the photo session begins. This will put to rest any questions you or your model might have before moving into the shoot itself. What is the importance of a model release, you might be asking? Well, specifically, a model release is a contract allowing you to use a person's picture in specified ways in return for value received. A release protects you, your model, and most importantly, your client. Any recognizable likeness calls for a release unless it's used as a news photo. Releases are needed for pets, manufactured products, trademarks, any recognizable property. Also, public display of your photographs in an exhibition constitute publication in the eyes of the law. Now, how about copyright? Well, copyright laws vary from country to country. In the U.S., the owner of the copyright is the photographer in nearly all cases, unless, of course, you're a staff photographer or have signed a contract to the contrary. In Britain, it's slightly more complex. There, the owner of the copyright is the person who owns the material on which the photograph is printed, or a third party commissioning a photograph. In all cases, it's best to review the laws of the country in which you're doing business. In this final section of our program, we'll go into the studio and on location and arrange 5 assignments. The assignments will include a book jacket photo of an author. Next, we'll be on location shooting a calendar-like image. The third assignment will take us back into the studio to shoot a boudoir lingerie session. After that, we'll be shooting a press release photo of a rock group. Finally, we'll be back on location shooting an advertising layout. Of course, our objective in these assignments is to apply the techniques talked about in the last hour. This section will also be a good reference section for you in the future as you become more and more involved in the photographic process. Here we have a very simple setting of an author in a chair. Our desired effect is a clean but somewhat dramatic image. Keep in mind, this photo will be used on the back of a novel. The novel is a murder mystery, so it would be fun to keep the flavor of the jacket photo in keeping with the book. So let's start by placing a key light at about a 45-degree angle to our author. This shot will be medium framing. Since we want to keep the image rather classic or dramatic, I suggest filling in with just a reflector. This will cast a very natural fill light and not overpower the key light you've set. Meter the shot and try to keep the ratio of the key to fill about 4:1. This is a pretty dramatic ratio, but it doesn't make the image too dramatic. By moving the reflector back and forth, you'll see the effect on the man's face. When the reflector gives you what you're looking for, lock it down. To complete the image, it would be nice to separate the man in his chair from the background. So, of course, that would be accomplished by directing a small spot onto the back of the author from the fill side. This backlight will have to be adjusted for its intensity as well. Just move it in or away depending on the desired effect. Now from a bird's eye view, that's what this lighting setup looks like. And that's how the finished image looks. Let's step through it one more time. Key light, reflector for fill, then a backlight. In this setup, I'd recommend shooting with an 85mm or longer portrait lens if you're shooting with a 35mm format. If you learn these simple techniques, you'll be well on your way to creating some very glamorous images. Next, let's go on location and put together the swimsuit calendar shoot. As we mentioned earlier in the show, for nude or even swimsuit photography, it's nice to work in a secluded location like this one. Even if the model is perfectly comfortable working in front of a crowd, the presence of onlookers can be a little unnerving. I would suggest talking through the intended setup with your model before you actually begin shooting. In this type of location shoot, you need to be aware of all the variables. First and foremost will be lighting considerations. Today's light is very diffused, like a lot of days on the Oregon coast. This will create very soft, warm images that complement the model and the setting. As you can see, we have a lot of textures and background distractions that might pull the viewer's attention away from the model. So I'll have to keep that in mind when I begin my session. What I want to achieve is the model in the foreground with a very alluring look directly at the camera. The background will be the waterfall, but somewhat soft or out of focus. To make sure that the model separates well from the background, I'll use a long lens. Since we need the photo to look very natural, I'm going to use the sun as the only light source and a gold reflector to add highlights to Lori's skin. First, I'll begin by placing the model. As you can see, I've placed her directly facing the diffused sunlight. This will take full advantage of the light we do have to work with. This will be the extent of any lighting. The beauty of the shot will be its natural setting and the pose of the model. Here's a bird's eye view of the setup. In this case, remember to keep in mind the color of the suit the model will wear and other color considerations. Hair color, eye color, all will be important in the final outcome. For a simple comparison, take a look at the same sort of setup in direct sunlight here by the glider. Since the sun is so direct, we need to fill in the shadow side, as you see Terry doing here. Just as the gold reflector added warm tones to Lori's skin by the waterfall, this white reflector adds the needed fill-in in the high-key situation. Here's a look at the finished product from this shoot. Here we've created a simple set of a bed with a diffused lighting scheme in mind. What we're trying to achieve here is an after-the-party look. Once again, all the elements contribute to the overall feeling: makeup, posing, wardrobe, and of course, lighting. To make this glamour boudoir set soft and sexy, we will again employ indirect lighting. I'll be shooting from approximately the foot of the bed, with the model's head nearest to the camera. I'll direct her into a very relaxed, seductive pose. Lighting-wise, we'll direct a small spot through some light diffusion onto the bed. Next, we'll use a couple of gold reflectors. This will heighten the warm evening tone. To complete the look, I've created a blue moonlight effect coming through a nearby window. This was accomplished by placing a large light behind the Venetian blinds with a blue gel covering the lamp's lens. Well, I'm ready to shoot, so let's get going. This type of overall lighting will be very soft and complement the model well. Having her move into very natural, relaxed poses will be easy in this type of setting. However, being on a bed might be a little uncomfortable for a first-time model. So remember, keep up a constant conversation with the model. That always encourages her, tells her how wonderful she looks. In this studio setting, I'm using a portrait-style lens. As you recall, this will give you the truest image possible. Let's take a look at the overall lighting setup from a bird's eye view. First, we have the diffuse light, which is acting as our fill source. Next to the camera, we have our key light source. And we have a small kicker at one side of the bed that's acting as an accent light for the bed itself. And then there's the spotlight that creates our moonlight effect coming through the window, and of course the gold reflectors that will help warm up the entire set. some examples of the final outcome of the session. We were able to cover a lot of different angles with the same basic lighting setup. As you can see, the images turned out very striking. Well, we've struck the boudoir assignment and opted for a minimal set to photograph the group. While the group's in makeup, let's put together a basic lighting setup. Since we're dealing with 5 people, we'll need to keep them fairly close together. So we'll keep that in mind as we begin lighting. The overall effect I'd like to achieve for them is hard, contrasty, yet fairly sexy. The sexiness will come from them, their look. The style of the photograph will come from the lighting design. Since we're dealing with a canvas background, let's add some drama to it. This can be done by using a small spot aimed directly at the background, using the barn doors on the instrument to create a slash-type look. Since I want the image to be contrasty, a high lighting ratio will be best. So a large key light, undiffused, will be set at a little less than 45-degree angle to the talent. This light, along with a background light and a fill light, will be all that I will start with. Once again, the backlight will help separate them from the background and create definition to their shapes across the top of their shoulders and hair.
One on each side.
Now that they're ready to go, let's begin the shoot. I've asked them to bring some props along, guitars, horns, you know, to add to the effect of the image. Remember as we begin the session that the glamour image is best captured when the models move slowly and deliberately. Since the photo will be used primarily for press and publicity purposes, I'm going to try to keep the image very stylized.
Okay, here we go.
The models should be looking directly at the camera, and I, as the director, should be asking them to give me their most provocative looks. As you shoot, remember the basics we covered in shooting pictures of couples. Have one performer strike a pose you're happy with, and ask the other models to work around it. If you do this, you'll have much more control over the finished product. And again, I can't stress enough that photography is a very subjective art. There is no right or wrong way to create an image. If the finished product is what you had in mind, you're successful. What I had in mind for this group was something dramatic. Take a look at the finished product and see what you think. In our final assignment, I'll be shooting an outdoor product advertisement. This assignment should be like a slice of life, in other words, very real. The product, salad dressing. The setting, a picnic by the river. The elements for this shoot are a little bit more involved. First, we have models portraying the all-American couple. Next, several props, wardrobe, and makeup considerations. The important thing to remember in this type of ad layout is that the people in the photograph are living a better, happier life because they use this particular product. Also, since we want the ad to look very natural, we don't want to draw a lot of attention to the product. Just make sure it's visible in a key location in your frame. Now I'll decide exactly how I want to shoot this action. Oftentimes, an art director from the ad agency will be on these types of shoots to make certain that their agency is looking out for their client in every possible way. This job is a direct job from the client, so no agency people. Of course, in this natural setting, I want to take advantage of the subdued sun. This will create even more soft and glamorous images. This approach will give the setting an almost too beautiful to be real look. Using such a large diffuse source of light like a cloudy sky does present a bit of a problem, flat, dimensionless light. To resolve the problem, place a large reflector in front of the talent to bounce light back into their faces. Continue moving this surface closer to the models until you get the exposure you're looking for. Now the trick to this assignment will be placing the product. I'm going to work it into the edge of the picnic table by the basket. lighting may be even more critical on the product than the models. One thing I need to be aware of is the harsh reflection on the product from the bounce card. In my camera's viewfinder, it will show, so I'll be sure to catch it. Take a look at the results from this session. Well, that wraps up the assignment portions of our program. You might have noticed that a lot of the techniques employed to create the looks that we demonstrated were very simple. I believe that the best way to get the look that you're after is to start with the basic tools and build only if needed. As they say, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. In photography, the truest, cleanest, most realistic and glamorous images, I believe, come from simple technique. What we're after is a vehicle that lets one reveal the inner spirit, if you will, of an individual. That's true glamour. Thanks for listening and learning. If this is your first introduction to glamour photography, then you'll be challenging yourself to make a lot of changes in the way you approach the art of image making. So be patient and practice, practice, practice. I'm Brian Ratty. Welcome to the world of glamour photography.